So creepy to see like the video. Maria and I were playing around with it, and we were just putting it on her notices to check. Hi. Can you do it?
I don't see it yet.
Okay.
Are you guys doing a live video?
We are.
Where did it appear?
Here, I'll put it like on something that's not someone right now.
Not me.
I know. I moved it that way. Can you refresh it?
Yeah, here, let me try again.
Okay.
That's it, just in case you don't.
Oh, it's going. No, it's fine. It's going. I see the light. It dims sometimes, but it's at the end of it. It's nice to be here. This is like a fun break.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Anything?
Oh,
Yes.
wow, this is a little meta.
You can see.
Yeah. Here, I'll check the volume.
Okay.
It's just muted. Maria gonna be the one who's yeah.
Some computer person.
Okay.
Ooh.
Alright.
Yeah, go.
Take some pictures for the Instagram if I remember to post them. So it's so bad.
No, that's fine. You've done a lot. Go
Okay. Make sure the easels don't like get stolen because I'm responsible for them. They're my departments.
Okay. Do you want me to take them? Do you have?
I think Maria said she would, but I'll double check with her before I leave.
Okay.
So, yeah. Maybe I'll watch the live stream.
Yeah, do it actually. You can be our little test person too. Do it.
Okay. Good luck.
Be safe. Feel better. It's good?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
From this camera?
Yes, this is the one. Do you want to see
Sure.
maybe like I put it off because I didn't want to like just videotape you without you knowing.
Setting up.
Yeah. But, if you want to get like an idea of it, I can point it to you.
Yeah.
Something like that. You want all of this in view, correct?
Yes, that would
Okay.
be great. I actually don't think I'm actually gonna need this table. Do you guys need this table for anything? No. Just for me. Okay. That's fine.
It's just hanging out. I don't remember. You did now.
Yeah, just so we don't block the easels. Yeah, I think that looks good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
It's relatively good.
I think that looks really good.
So are we waiting on easels now?
Yes. Or pictures. Did we check these?
Yes. Anyway. It's needed right
Oh. Okay. Cool.
I should have asked. I should have told you to put the. Would that be beneficial? Do you want me to see if I can put the sound? Then you can give me like a 2-second delay to run to it.
What do you think? What would be best for the people here too?
That's true. Okay, let me double check the rules because I always forget. It's either you put it in front of speakers or you put it in front of. Okay, so it's probably good that they're so far back, honestly. The other one is I think it's good.
Okay. It looks good.
I'll turn it off.
Do we have any?
No, I don't see. Do you want me to send like a little email reminder or something? Like really fast?
Or I'll do it on my phone when we start.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Or if you,
I can do it on my
okay,
computer.
and it won't end the thing. Maybe if
Not
you
if
just
I
do a
go.
tab.
Yeah, not if I just go to my email. I'll send it on the Science on Tap one too.
Oh, that's perfect. They should be here. They're perfect. Oh, all right. Here we go. Oh my god, yes, that makes it worse. Okay, can I turn? How do I make this go on?
With your phone, hold it for like 2 seconds.
Hold the flip or?
The button. Like hold it for like 3 good seconds. I've done it before too, I know.
Okay, now the lights went off.
You might have turned it off.
That looks promising. Maybe she didn't. It's not on right now. I'm not filming. Mainly for demonstration purposes later.
Me too.
Oh, awesome.
We still don't have online guests yet.
Testing. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello. Hi, everyone.
I think she said she works at Virginia Tech part-time. Like she has 2 part-time jobs that she cobbles. Yeah. I love it. No, it's the like around here you just feel how old everything is. It's so cool. No one? Damn.
I emailed all the people though, so maybe somebody will
I was
pop up.
hoping we'd get like 2 or 3.
That's okay.
Oh well.
Is there anyone other than the Martha? Wasn't there another person? Am I forgetting?
Well, she was gonna send it to her graduate seminar. I love those red trees. Yeah. My new favorite, I just learned the name of Mountain Ash. I was down like in Silva over the weekend, so it's another 1,000 feet up. I don't know if we have it here, but with those red berries against the sky. Oh my gosh, it's so cool looking. Right? But what a great way to just get outside. We had an event a few months ago with Matt Gentry. You know that he paints for the Roman Times. Or I guess he's a journalist, but his hobby is really painting. That was a great one. We probably had what, maybe 100 people. Yeah, a lot of people turned out. All the art clubs came out. Like the whole valley. So yeah, it was cool. You can follow us on Facebook. We're trying to do more art stuff. Oh, sweet. Oh, I don't know what that is. Did you paint that?
Oh my goodness, you'll have to show her after, please. That's really pretty.
Everybody thinks that's a prank. I sit down on camera.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Oh,
really
you can do this kind of thing. Wow.
Ooh, that's cool.
Even though this is a real good phone camera, but I'd rather use my phone camera. I'd rather use my camera.
Oh yeah. I find that my phone camera, I don't know anything about photography, but it washes things out. So when I'm out, like I love hiking and road riding, but I never take pictures. And like it just doesn't really do it justice. Oh yeah.
Oh my
Wow,
goodness,
look, you
that's a
can see
gorgeous
the
swallowtail.
Oh yeah, Mika's an entomologist.
So don't show me pictures of bugs because I'll talk to you all night. That's gorgeous. It's a male. It's a male ant. That's weird. That's kind of uncommon.
I saw what I think was like, yeah, how do you
How you tell if it's a male?
Because only ants have wings and all the rest are female.
I didn't know ants even
I wanted to start off with a photo. So I think so I sent everybody off for 5 minutes to practice some of the tips that I gave, and then I'll be doing a more formal talk for about
Vince and Timmy.
I'm gonna ask her
Oh, and I'm supposed to take pictures.
As a part-time job.
Oh, it's
my
doing like
job
that.
is talking about how we like corridors with the conservation. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. That sounds wonderful. I would, yeah. They're like, I'll be around. So the top middle part, and there's a whole other half hour for like Q&A and hanging out afterwards. So stick around.
Another thing that's amazing, sunset. You ever do like stars?
But I was at the waterfall in West Virginia. The whole coast of waterfalls up in this type of
Oh, they love that. That sounds fun. Do you remember where you went to
It
school?
was at a waterfall.
Out more towards the bottom, and then I come up on the side. That's right. Actually, nice. You got slides.
That's really cool. Maybe there's salt or something in it.
For a while.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I folded that up. No, not at all. Everything here is for total public use. Well, folded that made it not accessible to anybody.
You have to send that to like an entomology magazine or something. Honestly, yeah. I think there's one called Entomology Today.
I might look to you to tell me that again. Okay, if you remember, that would be, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's Entomology Today.
Yeah, I love that.
And then I was just, kids didn't know I was a scientist, didn't know what purpose was, and I wanted to let their, I used the word.
Yeah, I think there should be a newsletter and or a calendar for the second site that I sent you. And you should probably have that form. Those are cool. Yeah, you should definitely get your flowers. Like your dad.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
My entire family.
We can look at it every time.
I was with you, Ted. She came now.
Even it out?
Well, at least we know that here. I'll turn the volume back up.
Yeah.
Testing.
Perfect.
Figure out where to stand so it doesn't get bad.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Thank you for humoring me with going on a little photo walk. I hope at the end of this we've saved plenty of time for question and answer and just hanging out and chatting. So if you feel like sharing your photographs or if you have any questions, I would love to talk about it at the end. And again, if you, in front of it, okay, perfect. If anybody wanted to take a picture of the tips and tricks, especially for the Android users who I don't have as much comments on because I don't know that as well, this is here for you. All right, so I'll start off just by sharing a bit about my background, how I got started in this a little bit more niche field of science storytelling. From my earliest memories, was completely obsessed with being outside, wildlife. There's pictures of me running around my backyard in diapers, holding handfuls of frogs in Tampa, Florida. It's just like very much my heart. And I knew that I wanted to spend my life working with animals or animal adjacent. And so I went to NC State, got a degree in wildlife biology. And while I was getting that degree, I was introduced to the field of environmental education. I've always loved talking with people, loved connecting with people, but thought if I get a wildlife degree, I have to be a biologist. And I was fortunate enough to get an internship at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences under a very talented environmental educator who really opened up my eyes to how important connecting people to nature can be. And so I knew that that's really what I wanted to do. So I got a master's in environmental education, but I had this weird semester between getting my undergrad and starting my graduate degree, where I thought I was just going to hang out at home in Tampa, Florida, like not work, not do anything. My mom said, "Oh no, you're going to do something. You are not just going to hang out at home," which in the moment was frustrating. Now it's like one of the best things she ever did for me. My mother is also an artist, and she was connected to a very well-known local photographer named Carlton Ward Jr., both of them being artists in the Tampa community. And she said, "Hey, you're a wildlife photographer. My daughter is a wildlife person who has picked up a camera a time or two. Do you want an intern?" And he was very nice to take me on and give me this internship. I traveled with him to, this was fall of 2015, photographed sea turtles and ranch lands. And I thought like, oh, this is so great. And I'm so excited to start grad school in January of 2016. Well, then he tells me, "So I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but I'm going on a 1,000-mile, 70-day hiking, biking, and kayaking expedition to raise awareness for wildlife corridors in Florida. Do you want to come?" I was like, sure. That sounds intimidating, but I would really love to do that. And he had with, so him being a conservation storyteller, partnered up with a black bear biologist and a conservationist who happened to be his best friends to highlight this thing in Florida called the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Who here is familiar with what a wildlife corridor is? Okay, so a lot of people. So I won't bore you too much with background, but basically people need highways and roads to travel where they want to go. Wildlife need green highways or green corridors to travel where they want to go, to find food, to find appropriate habitat, to find mates. And Florida, being one of the most developed states in the entire country, I think it's the third most populated state in the country, has two very distinctive corridors of green space left in the entire state. It comprises about 18 million acres of private and public land, and it is under threat every single day. I think the last statistic I read, about 1,000 people a day move to Florida. We lose on average about 20 acres of land an hour. It's bad. And we have incredible wildlife in Florida that deserves to live there just as much as people do. Florida panthers, the last big cat in the entire eastern United States, black bears, gopher tortoises, sandhill cranes, amazing, amazing creatures. That's a lot of, like, you all are here because you're interested in science. A lot of people, science is sort of like a foreign concept. It's like enough wildlife corridors. Like, I just want to go to Disney World. I just want to go to, you know, the golf course and, you know, whack a few balls around. So this group, Carlton, a black bear biologist named Joe, and a conservationist named Mallory, were like, how do we make people care about this corridor? How do we inspire people to vote, to talk to their legislators, to talk to their friends and family about how important these corridors are? They're like, well, I think we go out in them ourselves. I think we show that this land is still actively connected through really impactful media like books and films, and put boots on the ground, put wheels on the ground, put paddles in the water, and show that, like a black bear can move, we can also continuously move through this corridor. And so I was able to accompany them on this dotted line, 1,000 miles in 70 days from the heartland of Florida. There's an area just outside. It's actually really a stone's throw away from Disney World, called the Green Swamp, all the way through the western coast of Florida up to Gulf Islands National Seashore in right next to the Alabama border in Pensacola. They had, ooh, wind. I did not account for wind. All of this is going to be useful later, but hopefully it can survive there for a little while. Or maybe, yeah, we'll just put it back. Awesome. I'll just set these back here, and I can just share them like one by one too. So definitely should not account for the wind. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
Thank you. I actually might grab that one just to make sure I stay on tap. So the expedition that I went on, which I've had so many props. resulted in this book, which everybody's welcome to come up and take a look at afterwards while we're just sitting here hanging out. We called it the Forgotten Coast because so much of the land that we traveled during this expedition is like the tiniest little sea shanty towns you've ever been in. Forests like Tate's Hell, Apalachicola National Forest that just like aren't on the national radar. It's really a forgotten part of Florida, but so critical to the wildlife corridor infrastructure that it was incredibly worth highlighting. Before my time, before I was involved with Carlton and Joan Mallory, they did an inaugural expedition starting all the way at the bottom of Florida and traveling up peninsular Florida. There's really a V of the wildlife corridor, and this was the right V that went all the way up to the Okefenokee Swamp in southern Georgia. That expedition was 1,000 miles in 100 days. So they made our expedition the same amount of time, but didn't give us the 30 extra days to complete it. And there was a pretty small film that was made about that, kind of just locally published on local PBS stations, but it gained a lot of traction. It got a movement going that ended up culminating in the actual legislative protection of the wildlife corridor in 2021. You don't get to say this very often. It was bipartisan, unanimous support of this green space and wanting it to be designated for permanent funding to allow its future protection. So it's $300 million a year allocated to trying to provide landowners with conservation easements and all kinds of stuff. And it's these kinds of materials that made that happen. After this as well, I've got a QR code where you can pull it up on your phone and be linked to all of the different films or their trailers to see what it was about. But it was this kind of storytelling where, you know, it's conservation in action, but with high quality visuals that really made this a unique movement in terms of the environmental things that were happening in the country at the time. The Forgotten Coast ended up airing on national PBS. It ended up doing the film festival circuit and getting a lot of national attention. I felt very fortunate to have quite a few. I think I have 20 photographs in that book of mine that were published. And then I was the field producer, one of the field producers for the film. And I basically got completely addicted. I was like, I can take my camera and go out into wild Florida and like make people who have never seen it care about it. Like that's just, I want to do that forever. Moving on from expedition land, Carlton was like, I want to do something even bigger. I want to do something even more impactful. So how about we get National Geographic on board and write a couple grants and see if we can highlight one of the most iconic characters of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, which is the Florida panther. I was his field assistant for the first few years of this project. We ended up naming the project The Path of the Panther. And that is really path being the first word. This is absolutely about protecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, telling the story of this landscape and the land that this iconic animal needs to survive. We used to have Puma color is the scientific name of the Florida panther. They ranged across the entire North American continent. And now, especially in Eastern North America, all we have is this tiny little population right here. That's the only place they exist in the entire Southeast United States. But if this corridor remains connected and we actually make a path for them to move, maybe the panther can reclaim its homeland in Georgia or in South Carolina. So this experience led me to a new facet of conservation storytelling, which is this monster. This is a remote camera trap. So if you've ever seen like little cameras that a lot of times outdoorsmen or hunters or people who want to keep a watch on their land put on trees, This is like that times 5,000. So this photo on the cover of this book was not taken by a human. This panther took his own photograph by tripping. Okay, this is going to be a miracle if technology actually works for me. He took his own photograph by walking through the woods and going in front of an infrared trigger. Whoop, wake up. You gonna do it? It's looking at it, it's thinking about it, and taking, yes, taking his own photograph. It is incredibly rare to see something like a Florida panther, or even wildlife in general. You know, you see wildlife scuttling across a road, or dipping behind a tree in your backyard. To get into their world, into their space, you really have to remove yourself, but leave technology behind in your place. Now, this setup is like as minimal as you can possibly get. It's all wireless. This is an infrared trigger, which sends a signal to my camera, which has a transmitter on top of it, which then connected to the microphone port has another transmitter that tells my flashes something has broken the beam, go off and take a picture. Now, to tell the story of the Florida panther, I managed 25 of these across South Florida. Everything you can possibly imagine wants to destroy this. This is like a bear's favorite chew toy. It's also, a lot of these, we didn't have the funds to make them wireless, so it's a lot less expensive to keep them wired. Mice love to chew those wires. It's their favorite thing in the entire world to snack on. And so I would come and these would be, knocked over, pushed over, wires chewed. We left a lot of the cameras out during Hurricane Irma, and they ended up completely flooding. And some of the most exciting footage, actually, that we got, Pat the Panther is also a film on National Geographic and Hulu. There's an amazing sequence that made it into the film of a camera that survived as the water was going up the lens. So you just get to watch it over a series of photographs like drown slowly. It's, sad and expensive, but like ultimately an incredible storytelling tool to show people like in real time what's happening in the lives of these animals, how incredibly resilient they are. And if we can just work collectively together to allow them the space and the time and the resources to access their habitat, they will thrive. Hurricanes be darned. So all the photographs that blew over back there, I was so inspired by this work and the idea that photographs and films and visual storytelling can make a real difference. I was like, I want to put science behind this. I want to dedicate my entire master's thesis to looking at, can conservation photographs in a classroom setting be effective tools for environmental education, but also move young people towards conservation action. And so that's what I did. Give me 1 second to put them in order, and then I'll tell the story. Okay, and I'll hopefully, if the wind dies down, I can have them all set up later so that it can just be viewed as they said it was supposed to be. So I took these photographs, which are all Carlton's photographs, telling the story of the Florida black bear into 6th grade classrooms all across South Florida. I originally, when I first entered the classrooms, did not tell the students who I was. I didn't tell them I was a scientist. I didn't tell them what I was there for. I didn't have captions with the photographs because I very much wanted to capture what I called their authentic reactions or implicit impressions of the photographs, and if the photographs could possibly, in and of themselves, move them towards conservation action. So the story went like this, and I did a whole environmental education lesson after they viewed the photographs and gave me their responses, so they didn't just leave like, who was that lady who showed us all those bear pictures? So I would show them this picture. who doesn't love a cute fuzzy bear? Like, this draws you in. This is like, yes, I can get on board with this. A bear in its idyllic habitat, having a great time, looking like Teddy himself. Moving to, this is where that bear wants to live in Florida. And this is what so many people do not identify Florida as, but what is, 18 million acres of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. This is a longleaf pine palmetto ecosystem right at sunrise. I mean, beautiful, iconic, wild Florida at its finest. Unfortunately, this is what wild Florida is becoming at 1,000 people moving there a day, at 20 acres of land lost an hour. Cookie cutter developments, 0.8 acre lots, packing in as many people as possible. And so these were all viewed like in succession by the students. What scientists and people who care about the bears are trying to do is understand what they're doing, where they're moving, what are they eating, who are they meeting up with, where are they going. And so scientists are putting tracking collars on them. And one of the biggest inspirations for the expeditions of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, this is Joe Guthrie, the black bear biologist, who was one of the founders of the expeditions. He collared a bear, they called it M34 as part of his study, and that bear traversed a massive part of the corridor, but stopped right at Interstate 4 and went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth at Interstate 4 and could not find a place to cross. So ultimately turned around and went back where he came from. If Interstate 4 had had one of these, maybe M34 could have crossed. This is also taken by a camera trap. No human was there when this photograph was taken. The bear took his or her own photo. And what would happen if this overpass wasn't there? Bear pancake, right? The ability of underpasses and overpasses to keep the wildlife corridor connected is incredibly, the significance cannot be overstated. And students responded so strongly to this image because they were like being able to see themselves like a human in this picture along with the bear coinciding at the same time. And a caveat, this was not in any capacity an anti-hunting message, but one thing that Florida did not do well was they did approve a bear hunt when the science of the bear population management did not support there being a hunt because the population was so fragmented. It's been so hard for the bears to stay connected that when a hunt was approved, it ended up really damaging some of the smaller populations around the state. There are other states where bear hunts are done super successfully and does not damage the overall population, but the science and wildlife management has to support that this is a good thing. And in Florida, it wasn't, but it got a lot of political pressure, so it got pushed. And so with showing that to all of the students, I wanted them to tell me, without context of me being a scientist, what does this photograph make you think about? What does this photograph make you, does this photograph make you feel anything? And does this photograph motivate you to action? And by far and away, almost all of my students reported some sort of action, even if it was, this photograph makes me want to go outside. This photograph makes me want to walk my dog around my neighborhood. I mean, really simple things, but in the environmental education movement, so much of the barrier is just getting that push to action. Behavioral change is one of the hardest things to affect, and art and storytelling is such a natural vehicle to impact behavioral change because it hits at your heart and doesn't just impact you on a cerebral level. And that has basically been what I've dedicated my life to doing, is working with art as a vehicle for conservation change and making sure that the next generation and anybody who's alive today knows that the natural world is for everybody and that it's worth exploring and so worth being a part of. And that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And I would love to hang out with anybody who wants to come look at the books, look at the map, ask any particular questions. Again, please get the QR code. It'll link you to all of the different either the films themselves, if they're available for free, or the trailers. Again, the Path of the Panther film, which I was a field producer on as well, is available on Disney Plus and Hulu. I make the tiniest, I was behind the camera the whole time, but I make the tiniest little cameo. You see my blonde bun looking at a panther that had just been released back into the wild after being hit by a car and rehabilitated. And I would just love anybody to come up and look at the equipment, look at the books, and say hi. Thank you so much for your time, and appreciate you all. And I guess if anybody would like to ask public questions, that's really fun too. And any of the pictures that you took on your photo walk, if you want to share them online and tag Science on Tap NRV, I would love to see them. The team would love to see them. I'm not making that thing happy. It's okay. Oh, you can walk around with Mike. Okay, perfect. Maybe I'll turn mine off, and then I'll just talk really loud.
Okay, I'll just talk really loud. I can talk loud. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions that they want answered publicly, if you don't, you can come talk to me. Yeah, here. Are you still connected with Florida projects? I am. So I didn't even say what my job is. So I still work for the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation as a collaboration teams facilitator. Maybe this one. Oh, this one's happier. I help coordinate and provide resources for our statewide partners. The Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation does not do any land acquisition work. We are an advocacy organization, but we work really closely with the Nature Conservancy, land trusts across the state, biologists and representatives from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and I basically act as the liaison to the foundation. It's a fully remote job. I sometimes wish I was back in Florida, not right now. It's beautiful here. I'm very happy to be here right now. But I remotely work for them and making sure that all of their collaboration partners have the resources and support that they need, particularly around our communication tools and different advocacy materials that we have. And I also work part-time for the vet school at Virginia Tech, and I do work for the Center for Animal-Human Relationships and do media support and student project coordination, so that's why I'm up here. And my lovely husband is getting his PhD at Virginia Tech, so that's why I'm also here. But yeah, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Expeditions turned into a nonprofit organization led by the woman who was the conservationist from the very first expeditions, Mallory Dimmitt. She's our CEO now, and she's incredible. She's like one of my conservation idols. And so yeah, I still have my toes in Florida, and very happy to be doing that. Any other questions? Please feel free to come up and talk. Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, so there are wildlife corridors everywhere. Virginia, as far as I'm aware, does not have a designated wildlife corridor like the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Like there's not like legislation designating it. But as far as I'm aware, I mean, Virginia has beautiful public lands and national parks, but one of the things that's so important about wildlife corridors is it's not just the public land, it's private land as well. So private landowners or agricultural lands. One thing that is vitally important to the Florida Wildlife Corridor is actually cattle ranches, which you don't often think of cattle ranches and environmental groups like working hand in hand, but they are on the front lines of keeping land open and from being sold to developers. So we work really hard to keep them in possession of their land. And I know Virginia has lots of agriculture, lots of horticulture, and those pieces are all part of the patchwork puzzle that keep a wildlife corridor connected. I'm actually really, for as long as I've lived in Virginia, I've been really mainly focused on Florida. I'd be very curious to know what level of connectivity across the state Virginia actually has. If anybody, I don't know if anybody happens to have any information about that, but I know we have lots of natural resources professionals and students in the room, but I won't put anyone on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, one comment first, you must have a lot of photos of moving traffic.
So many photos of moving traffic, and so many photos of like bugs will still off the camera sometimes if they're sensitive enough, and there's just like thousands of not bears and panthers, but.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
I've heard that JPEG lose a little bit of quality every time you save it.
Totally.
And is the raw format you mentioned, is that more stable that way?
Very good.
Your photos?
Yeah, so the question was with a JPEG image with using cameras or even your phone, you're typically shooting in the JPEG format, saving them or re-downloading them over and over again, you lose quality. So shooting in RAW, the quality from the beginning is a lot higher, but RAW photos can be a little tricky because for them to be like optimally lit, a lot of times, like RAW photos tend to a lot of times be a little bit darker, and then you have to like go in and brighten them up later. But the quality in general is much higher because there's so much more information and data saved in that photo than a JPEG, like the megapixels are way higher. So yeah, re-downloading and resaving a raw file over and over again is not going to lose the quality as quickly as any type of re-downloading or any type of resaving is going to lose quality because you're creating a copy of a copy of a copy, but you will keep a raw file much clearer and crisper for longer than a JPEG.
Is the file size a lot greater?
It's huge. A raw file is much larger than a JPEG. It's going to take up a lot more memory space. Like say on like a 16 gigabyte card, you can maybe take 1,500, 2,000 JPEG files. You may only be able to take 200 or 300 raw files. It's going to take a lot more space. Yeah, but it's worth it if you're going to edit or blow them up large. Like a JPEG file, if you want to blow up and make like larger prints, is going to start showing like that grain a lot quicker than a raw file. And you can save a raw file after you edit it in a smaller file if you need to share it, to email it, to post it somewhere. But taking it in that raw format from the beginning gives you a much greater range of editing ability, and that data being stored in the photo is just a lot higher. Really good question. I think somebody in the back first, and now it's going to be thanks. Yeah.
Do you recall any of the dimensions of the overpasses or underpasses, like what the minimum dimensions are?
Oh, that's such a good question. We worked with so many different kinds, and even something as small as like a large road culvert can absolutely be an effective wildlife crossing or underpass. So don't, looking at that photo, that's a huge underpass. It does not need to be that big to be effective, which is something that we tell landowners all the time. If you can even, put an enlarged culvert under a particular road, because so many roads are built without crossings as a part of their thought process or part of the construction. But you could go back and not have to just elevate the whole highway. You could do, something much smaller and still be, maybe you're not going to get a bear that moves through a culvert, but coyotes, bobcats, foxes, skunks, Florida panthers get real slinky and small when they need to. Every dimension pretty much is going to be useful and effective in some way. As big as, that particular underpass is under Interstate 75 in South Florida, and it is a divided to 4-lane highway. So it's massive, but it does not have to be that big to be effective. I don't remember the exact dimensions of ones we worked with because there were just so many different kinds. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is it important to have long distance connectivity with these corridors?
Yeah, great question. The question was, why is it important to have long distance connectivity for these wildlife species? So a male Florida panther's home range is upwards of 200 square miles. That means that if another male within 200 square miles comes into one male's territory, they're going to fight and there's going to be one remaining. It's the #1 cause of death for panthers in Florida. It's called intraspecific aggression, which is a fancy term for they fight. And to be able to move a long distance is the only way that that population, whether it be bears, panthers, or even something like a gopher tortoise has a home range and is going to defend its food and its mates in that particular home range. For a population to be sustained long-term or to grow, which is the hopes of the Florida panther, there's only an estimated about 200 to 250 of them left in the wild. They have to be able to travel long distances. It's what these species were designed to do. They are long-ranging species. Migratory species like the sandhill crane or the whooping crane need to be able to effectively travel. You know, birds have it a little bit easier because they can fly over all the roads, but they still need large contiguous spaces to remain connected so that they can stop along their flyway and forage, stop along their flyway and rest so that nesting habitat is protected. And when you cut off something like a corridor, you create what we call islands of biodiversity. So for like the black bear in Florida, why it was such a bad idea for them to be hunted was such a big animal needs quite a bit of space to move and stay connected to others in the population. Some of those populations, the corridor in certain areas have been cut off and they were stuck in like, say, Ocala National Forest, huge forest range. But you get so many bears in this large, you know, space where they can't move to find more resources. They use up the resources, and then they start getting genetically inbred because that's the only option for you in the area, and you start seeing negative impacts on the population as a whole. So that's why keeping, you know, the big pieces connected by small corridors in between so that the animals can move is so important for long-term population health. Do you have another question?
Is there all the interstate coordination of wildlife corridors done federally, or is there any directly state-to-state coordination?
So you mean like between states? There is not that much coordination at all on a state level between states in regards to wildlife corridors presently. That's actually like a big part of the movement moving forward. We have connections to people who work in wildlife corridor space up in Yellowstone. It's called the Y-to-Y corridor up there, Yellowstone to Yukon. And there's a wonderful corridor up there. Wolves travel that corridor, elk, bison, and it so far is very state specific. States don't work together pretty much in any capacity very well these days, but we do have like the National Wildlife Federation, and there is a National Wildlands Network that are trying very hard to get the idea of either like regional corridors, like a southeast regional corridor, or like national corridors on the map, in people's brains, interstate coordination happening. We're getting there. We're not quite there yet. Florida is such a large state that at least for the past decade, we've been very, you know, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundations have been very focused on just successfully conserving the corridor itself. The corridor in Florida is 18 million acres. 10 of those are already in permanent protection. They are either, you know, federal lands, state lands, or private land holders have put them in conservation easements, which means they can never be developed into the future. But 8 million of those acres are still what we nicely call opportunity areas. We internally think these are the lands that are going to be lost if we don't move really quickly and make a big impact. So yeah, I have a lot of hope for interstate collaboration into the future. I think we have a long way to go before we're there. really good question. Yeah.
Are there any preventative measures being taken right now to make sure that there is no loss of those 8 million?
We have an entire foundation that's working on that right now. So our advocacy campaigns, our expeditions, trying to tell the story of these animals, but not even just the animals. I mentioned before the private landowners within the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And it's important to know too, this is not just land, we're talking about water is a critically important part of the corridor. So we're highlighting oyster fishermen, cattle ranchers, timberland owners. We did, a consulting firm came in and did an estimated value monetarily of what all of the economic value the Florida Wildlife Corridor adds to Florida's economy every year. We're talking about ecotourism, we're talking about agriculture, horticulture, cattle, and it's average estimate about $9 billion a year to Florida's economy that would be lost if the corridor was lost and we just sold it all to developers and let it be connected. So getting information, I think a lot of us here probably believe in the intrinsic value of nature. It should be allowed to be there simply because it exists. But a lot of people want to know what's the bottom line, what's the dollars and cents, why does this matter? So we're trying to utilize every resource available to us to make people think that this matters. We have friends in Tallahassee who advocate for us. And again, to the gentleman's point earlier, trying to get other states on board with the corridor movement. We just had an expedition. The film hasn't come out yet, but we had veterans come and be part of an expedition. One of the last films I was part of, we had students for the first time be part of the expedition, so reach as many audiences as possible. We have a mural campaign going on throughout the entire state of Florida, like anywhere there's a blank wall that could use some paint and some life, trying to get the corridor message out there, and then support landowners and allow them to retain their lands through conservation easements, which is essentially paying them for the development rights to their land, so they can continue to work the land. You can have cattle, you can have trees, you can have family members come move, but you can't ever sell it to something that would create like those cookie cutter communities. And those conservation easements go a long way in helping to keep that land from being developed. Yeah.
I'm curious about your approach to educating in the schools, where you put the pictures up without any context, and wondering if were there any misconceptions that came up? I'm especially thinking about the picture with the scientists. I can imagine younger students kind of not knowing what's going on. So just wondering how that follow-up session went.
Super astute observation. Yeah. That totally happened. And I did, after the students gave me all of their impressions, I did a full environmental education lesson with them. So they did not leave the session confused, but totally one of the takeaways from my thesis, it was sixth graders are incredibly intelligent beyond anything I imagined when I went in. They were like, oh yeah, that's a telemetry collar, that's a tracking collar. I was like, wow, very impressive. But that absolutely happened. And one of the takeaways from my master's thesis that I made sure to highlight was how important context is with storytelling and imagery. I chose very intentionally not to do that because I did not want to bias the students with their reactions. I really wanted to capture as best as I could their, I think again, I use that term authentic reactions to the photographs themselves. And when I'm asking them, what does this photograph make you think about? How does it make you feel? And does it make you want to do anything? I didn't want them to read a caption and be like, oh, this lady wants me to say something environmentally positive. Because then that would be, but students definitely, with that particular photograph, were like, is that bear hurt? Is that man hurting it? What's going on? But it was less than half of them thought that. Because of the context of the photo, there was a box that had some other stuff in it. A lot of them thought they didn't know quite what was going on, but something sciencey was happening. And I was very encouraged by that. But yes, I made that a point in my master's thesis to talk about how important context is with storytelling, and that if this was ever going to be an exhibit in a museum or something, how very important captions would be. But for my ends and kind of my experimental design, it made sense not to do captions. But that's great that you noticed that, because that totally happened. Any other questions? Well, I'm just so grateful. You guys had amazing questions.
One more.
Oh, one more. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. More kind of based off your question, but in general, I would love to hear a little bit about your process of getting to work with schools or the classrooms or the school system in general.
Oh, it was a doozy. Okay. So I was a student of the Hillsborough County Public School System myself. I really wanted to take these photographs into public school systems in Florida. Turned down every single time. It was not part of the standardized testing prep. It was not seen as, and I'm a child of the public school system. I have lots of love and lots of affinity for it. But every single time, I would contact, the school superintendent or the principal to be like, okay, talk to this person, okay, talk to this person. So, sent through the whole ladder and then eventually given to somebody. The 3 public schools that I reached out to, every single one of them turned me down because it did not help move them forward for standardized testing, and they just were like, we can't dedicate time to this. So all 3 of the schools that I went to were private schools that had open doors, open arms, were very excited to have me come. My process was reaching out to the principals of those schools, introducing myself, obviously showing that I was, with this organization and providing all the resources. I wasn't just some connecting them with my school, make sure it's all, copacetic. And then the principals connected me to the 6th grade classroom teachers. I went into one of the schools, I went into one classroom, and the other 2 schools, I went into 2 different 6th grade classrooms. So 5 classrooms altogether. When you're doing environmental education research, a lot of times, you don't, at least for this kind of stuff, this was, as far as I could tell, in 2016 when I was doing this research like this hadn't been done before, so I kind of got away with a smaller sample size because it was a bit of a pilot study, a bit of a niche thing. And the principal connected me to the classroom teachers, and I set up times with them, and they were the most wonderful, accommodating. I asked them, I was like, please don't prep the students ahead of time. Don't tell them, I didn't want to bias it in any way. They were so wonderful about it. But yeah, I had a lot of hopes being able to do this in public schools that just didn't work out. But I was very grateful that the private schools were open to it. Yeah. And if I ever did something like this again in the future, I would still very much try to go into public schools. And maybe it was a Florida thing, maybe Virginia public schools would be more open to it, but it was very heartbreaking to not be able to go into the additional target schools. Any other questions? I will be around. I'm not going anywhere, so if you want to come up and look at the books, if you want to check out the camera, if you want to get your picture taken with the camera trap, look through the photographs, please feel free. And thank you all so much for your time. This was a joy. Thank you.
Okay, we have a small gift for Alex. Thank you so much. Yeah, that is from us at the Center for Computing Science.
It's a beaker.
It's a beaker. You can get it filled. Yes. So our speakers do donate their time. We have a small donation jar up here. If you like our events, we appreciate any support you are able to give. And along that line, please tip your bartenders. They take care of us every month, so let's make sure we take care of them. See you all November 30th to learn about emotional regulation. Check out the QR codes. One is Alex's work. That's the one that's on regular paper. And the laminated QR codes have everything you need to know about Science on Tap. Thank you guys so much for coming out and drive home safely.
I will end this.